I think a conservative agenda is properly understood, is fully capable of winning power in this country, but not if it's divided into two camps.
You know, people have said you tried to do too much. Well, I've got to tell you something. When you're in a wealthy country like Canada, you ought to have very high ambitions, and I'd rather be accused of trying to do too much than trying to do too little.
Some people thought you said, I think the Canadian public is stupid.
Which I obviously wouldn't have ever said and didn't say. What I said was, I said the reason that there's no political will is that the other political parties think that Canadians are stupid, and I fundamentally disagree with that assessment.
Well,
Absolutely. There is no CV, there is no curriculum vitae that qualifies you to be Prime Minister of Canada. That's what makes it a job unlike any other.
I'm a little bit spicy. Some people don't take to me kindly.
You're more than a little bit spicy, Ezra.
You know what, Steve? It's not about Ezra Levant. It's about if Ezra Levant can be hauled before the state because he's too conservative or too this, can a Liberal be hauled tomorrow?
Certainly, you cannot, as he said, you cannot erase history. But you cannot also erase reality, contemporary lived reality of many, many Canadians.
The country is entitled to its history. I mean, we don't rewrite it.
No, of course not.
Michael, who's rewriting it?
You would.
No,
for
we're
each
not.
new
No,
fad.
we're not.
But how do you do a reality check on a bird pooping on Stéphane Dion? Do you say it never actually happened? How do you do the reality check on a picture of a disfigured face of Jean Chrétien? Many of these ads are visceral, they're visual, they have no content other than emotion, and you can't go find the facts to dispel them.
I have to say the party did lose control of the message around this. It allowed the message to get out that there was real substance hanging in the balance when there never was. I agree that...
Lost control. They said, you will be defeated if you do any one of these 7 things. That's not losing control. That's holding a gun to your head and saying, one more step and I shoot.
After viability, which the Canadian Medical Association defines as 20 weeks of gestation or a 500-gram fetus, I think abortion should be prohibited except if there's very strong medical reasons necessary for the mother's life or health.
Let me follow up with Patricia. Are those conditions, as laid out by Professor Somerville, acceptable to you?
No, definitely not. We don't need an abortion law in Canada because abortion is a medical procedure.
He looked to me today like a man with a cello with one string and his finger on one place saying, the other cellists are searching for the right note, I've got it.
Well, people still talk about it all the time, oh yeah. As soon as there's a bit of vice there, they think it's going to be the same thing, I guess, and nobody wants that, I don't think. You go in the country there and you see the trees, they're all dead, you know, now it's nothing funny, yeah.
I don't know what everyone else was doing, I'm not sure, but often, you know, a scrum will start and then all of a sudden it builds up a momentum on its own, and the next thing you know, it's a story and it keeps going.
And we remember the fall of 1917 at Passchendaele, where Canadians suffered some 16,000 casualties.
Where's your...
That's good for exercise.
That's what we're going to cut our kids' education for, so we can give some people a tax break. Well, a lot of us don't want it. We want education for our kids.
This is living proof that Canada works in practice, even if it doesn't work in theory. Like, we all get along. The English and the French and everybody else get along famously here in the streets, in the stores, in our day-to-day life. But if you asked us to sit down and write on paper in some kind of a document or a constitution how it is we get along, we'd probably fight with each other.
The main problem with psychopaths, I think a good name for it was moral insanity. Their thinking processes for most things work quite well, but their emotional side is very, very deficient. They don't seem to have feelings towards other people. They have no feelings of remorse if they do something to hurt another person. They're very callous. They can manipulate other people and be very glib about it. It truly doesn't bother them.
Your average psychopath, if you meet them, are rather charming and easygoing people, you know, who know where they're going, who know what they want and how to get it. But underneath that very calm exterior, there is a raging cauldron of raw emotion.
I never really met with so much racism and prejudice until I left home when I was 16. I went to a small community up in the northern Ontario, and I tell you what, I'd never seen anything like it before.
Light, movement, color. Kevin Chappelle can see them all, but he can't put them all together in his mind to make a coherent picture of his surroundings. He can see objects, but he can't identify them. One important exception, Kevin Chappelle has retained the ability to recognize faces.
This person ran behind me and kicked me hard enough to make me fall on my face. And I don't think it was the kick, it was that my mother saw it. I really didn't want her to know what it was like. So that stands out as the worst thing that happened, was that my mother saw it. I don't think anybody's ever prepared for that kind of concentrated, focused, directed hatred.
If you were here in '96, we would have started in '95, 8 years. 1,200 tires made the house. What we have now is tires, which have 300 pounds of dirt in them, and they're pounded like rocks. And then you have the pop cans that have been used to bring the wall out so that it will be flat eventually. These walls here, last time you saw them, they were just tires. These are now covered with concrete.
Lord Jesus, touch. It makes you think of springtime and the fresh syrup. It gets in your blood, I guess. You hear the birds and the geese going over and the warm weather starts to come and you think, well, you know, winter must be pretty near done, you know, and it's kind of happy that way.
First of all, it's magic when you see a balloon. And after that, when you're inside the basket, it's so peaceful, so calm around. It's something to discover. And also the point of view is very different. Here in Ottawa, it's so beautiful to discover the area from the sky.
So we do have the older people who grew up with this music, but we do have the younger generations who are coming in who are really, really starting to enjoy and appreciate it.
We may never meet again.
When I came up with the idea of doing a Louis Riel comic book, most people were really receptive. The only exception was a comic shop owner that I told, who was just incredulous. He said, don't you realize that the people who come into this store only want to read about superheroes? They're not interested in 19th century historical figures.
I studied journalism because I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to write for a newspaper or a magazine.
There are certain trends that happen in the dance world, and more often than not, choreographers will fall into those trends. So here's a place where they can experiment without adhering to whatever's popular and stick to whatever's in their heart.
Most of the dancers that come here are very creative and are much more open than just dancing.
She needs no introduction. Alanis Morissette.
Back then she was known for singing O Canada.